day of action, something we've never done. The fund has done some like webinars. We've done educational stuff for each other. The network originated as a bunch of us local officers. I'm the president of my local, a bunch of us presidents who are kind of frustrated with the state of the labor movement had started working together. But in the last few weeks, we realized even though we're small, even though we don't have, the depth or the resources that we'd like to have right now, somebody had to take a stand. And we figured that if we did, maybe we could attract towards us the federal workers who are looking for how to get involved in the fight, but also the broader public sympathies that we're looking for some organization to direct it towards. And I think we were right on both counts. I mean, there's been a huge influx of support, not only from the broader public, but most importantly to me, federal workers are coming towards us in droves. And so the day of action was themed around the slogan SOS, right? The save our services, but SOS being obviously a distress signal to the broader public. Because, while they're framing it, right, Elon Musk is framing it as efficiency and fixing the federal workforce. Really, it has little to nothing to do with that. It's about attacking the services that protect the public from predatory lenders. And, it's about protecting the socialized healthcare that veterans benefit from, the Veterans Administration, so many services, protecting our environment. They're really going after the entire regulatory state and anything that stands in the way of their pursuit of more profit. And the day of action was really successful. I think there were 35 or 40 cities where we had actions. Some of them, like in New York, where I am, were really big. We had more than 1,000 people last night with a bunch of electeds. And I think it was the first necessary escalatory step as we build towards what will be the necessary forces to actually stop them, which ultimately is going to have to be a lot of power we build. And we're looking to the broader public sector labor movement and the broader labor movement. The broader public really, I think, has to step into the streets with us if we're going to be able to stop them.
Yeah. Can you go over at least some of the anecdotes that you have in terms of what kind of immediate issues will arise from federal workers being laid off in this unceremonious manner, in a very swift manner?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think we're just seeing the beginning of it, right? They're going after the easiest targets, the probationary targets. There's little to no regulatory requirement for justifying the termination of a probationary employee. Although some of us do have some experience in fighting probationary terminations. It's not totally hopeless.
What is a probationary employee for the people that might not know?
Yeah. The first year of anyone's federal employment, sometimes it's 2 years, depends on when you were hired, which agency, but the point is the first year typically of your employment in the federal government, you are probationary. And what that means is your boss can fire you for any reason in that first year. Now, they are required to state what that reason is, and that reason has to be based in some fact. I say that because the basis of these mass probationary terminations are likely counter to those regulations. But a probationary employee is basically anybody who's new enough that management reserves the right to fire you. And it's important, like when you hit that 366th day and you're done with your 1 year, now a bunch more protections kick in that you didn't have otherwise. It's worth noting that most probationary, well, I don't know about most, but a lot of probationary employees are not early career. Some are, of course, but many are extremely high value, experienced folks who came out of the private sector, or maybe some other public sector service. I spent 7.5 years working as a dredger. I worked for a dredging contractor, and I got hired by the Army Corps of Engineers because I carried a ton of dredging subject matter expertise. So there's this idea that, they're just letting off the most, inexperienced people. And it's just really not true.
Someone in the chat saying probationary employees are not at will, and there is some confusion on that. So they can still be fired, or at least obviously the mass layoffs imply that there wasn't automatically a performance-based reason for their firing, which is what they were saying they were firing all the probationary employees for, right? But what are the odds in terms of virtually every single probationary employee having performance complications, right? So that there is this still is illegal, I suspect.
Totally. I mean, the regs say, and I only know this because we're in the middle of a fight for a probationary termination earlier this year, where the supervisor terminated the employee, and everything they asserted in the letter of termination was just not true. And so as we dug into it and I consulted the lawyers, what we realized was, well, the regulations require, and I think this is government wide, it might just be to those of us in the Department of Defense, but basically requires that there must be a reason. And implicit is that reason must be based in fact. So if the assertion is that it's a performance problem, but a recent performance evaluation and all available records indicate that this person did not have any performance problems, then they've been terminated for a false reason, and on those grounds can be disputed. So it's not actually an interesting anecdote. Last night, actually, if folks happen to, I have a feeling your viewership probably doesn't overlap a ton with MSNBC. But if anybody caught the interview I did on MSNBC last night, the guy I was with had just been terminated like 2 days ago now. And what he described was he and everybody else who was terminated, all the probationary employees who were terminated he worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. And he and all of his fellow probationary employees got the same exact email, and they didn't do the mail merger right.
What are the odds?
Exactly. They all had exactly the same performance problems, but they didn't do the mail merger right. So it said like, dear first name, last name, literally said dear first name, last name, and then proceeded to explain how your performance indicates that we have to let you go or whatever. I mean, it's very clearly not the spirit of, probationary. Probation is supposed to be a time to assess whether or not this person is right for federal service, and that's clearly not what they're doing.
Can we briefly talk about one of the other existing long-term issues that virtually exists in all private and public sector jobs in general, which is the problem with understaffing? At least in my experience covering labor issues with regular frequency, one of the things that most people actually strike over is understaffing, and the nurses union immediately comes to mind. So consistently, no matter where they are in the world, even under the National Healthcare Service in the UK or many different private networks here in the United States of America, nurses are constantly understandably complaining about understaffing. And I feel like this is a problem that persists in the federal regulatory agencies in the federal government as well. So mass layoffs of probationary workers across the board is obviously not only technically not legal, but also is coming at a time when we need more workers, not less. So this is one of the very foreseeable problems, I think, that the Trump administration is bringing about. You have planes falling out of the sky. You have air traffic control towers that are understaffed. You got 3 guys sometimes doing the work of 10 people or even 30 people, and they're not going to be able to produce the same work. And I think regulation and safety related issues especially require everyone in the workforce to be both competent and not overexploited for this reason. So what do you suspect will happen in terms of these mass layoffs at a time when the federal government needs more workers, not less?
I mean, first, just to confirm, the whole federal government, I can speak best, of course, to my experience, at the Army Corps, but the whole federal government is understaffed. I mean, so much work. I mean, it's crazy how much we do. Just like I work at the New York district of the Army Corps. We do all this military construction support for the different arsenals, West Point, all these different, military bases in the region, but also all the flood walls and levees, their initial construction and maintenance, and there's a bunch of studies that we do around protecting against future Hurricane Sandy type events. The program is massive. I think it was pushing $1 billion per year just this last year. And our workforce is it's probably down to 500 now. We were already having a staffing problem because the labor market's been tight. So you're totally right about the premise that we're understaffed as is. But what's the effect? And I think they know it. They don't have a problem with exacerbating the staffing crisis because that's precisely what they're going to use to further privatize all of the services that we provide. And you'd think about an agency like mine, which historically isn't primarily a contracting agency that contracts everything out. The Army Corps of Engineers, does its own engineering and designing and architecture. And we used to do much more of our own construction. The last decades of neoliberal privatization has corresponded with a lot of the offloading of what was pre